Good evening. I'm Councilwoman Lynn Barnes Caldwell, and I would like to welcome you to the Fifth District's community meeting for the month of July. This evening's special guest, we have Commissioner Kyle Allen. Everyone is from Lake County, so we went to our Lake County government today. We have Prosecutor Bernard Carter and our Lake County Surveyor, Bill Emerson. At this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Commissioner Allen, and he's going to give you information about what he does.
First of all, good evening to those who are present and those watching now or at a future date. People often ask me, well, what does a county commissioner do? Indiana has 92 counties, of which county commissioners are in 91 of them. The one exception would be Marion County, because city government and county government were combined in what we call Unigov during the 1970s. So Indiana has a commission form of government. In other words, there's not a singular county executive. As many of you know, across the border, you go to Cook County, you have one county executive, who's Tony Preckwinkle, and you have 17 commissioners that form the legislative branch of government. In our case, the state of Indiana chose to do a commission system. So there are 3 county commissioners. We each run in districts. The districts, at least in Lake County, I should say, are drawn geographically based upon the census. And in our case, we are an exception to the rule. The county commissioners do not draw their own districts. My district is drawn by the state of Indiana, Election Board and Registration. Commissioners can be elected in one of 2 ways. You can live in the district that you represent, but you are required to run countywide like the prosecutor, or you can live in the district and run in the district. So in my case, we have the latter. So my district is Gary, Maryville, Hobart, Lake Station, and New Chicago. I also have the northern end of Crown Point. So that would be approximately from 101st and Main north. The district is divided up into thirds, obviously. So there are roughly 500,000 people in Lake County. So I roughly have 166,000 people in my district. I'm trying to make sure I hit all the high points this evening. My election was prayerfully last year, and the people gave me the opportunity to serve again as their commissioner. I run by myself. The other 2 commissioners run in the presidential year, so they will be running next year, Michael Ripe and Jerry Tippie. I run in what they would call the midterm election. So I run again, I won't run again until 2022. What does the county commissioner do? We function basically as the mayors of the county. We function as the drainage board, the board of finance. We are in charge of all purchasing, procurement for the county, contracting. Any department that does not directly fall under the control of a county elected official by default falls under the county commissioner. So that would be the county health department. Weights and measures would be an example, community and economic development. There are other boards and commissions that we have appointments to where we have the majority. And there are others where we do not. We share those appointments with the county council. Under certain circumstances, we can appoint certain township officials. If the circumstances arises, it never has, because usually the chairman calls a caucus before the time expires. So we can appoint township trustees, township assessors. We are also empowered to remove them if necessary. But since I've been there since 2016, we've never been put in that position. Other than that, I think people don't realize that the county government plays a role. I think the thing that people most pay attention to is primarily the sheriff, who discharges his duties as the chief law enforcement officer, the county jail, obviously, and you come to the county when you go historically for court depending upon your circumstances, let me just say that. But for the most part, you do pay an income tax, and like any other unit of government, the biggest resource user is the criminal justice system, the clerk, the prosecutor, and the sheriff. So unless anyone has any questions, issues, or concerns, please feel free to ask me. Anybody? Now one question. Okay.
That's good.
Let's try to be as thorough as possible.
Well, I tell you, you've done a great job. I've learned something today. And I work for the county, so I got a total understanding of what you do. And I have an idea of what you do, and I know that it's very important to all of us to have great commissioners, because in essence, they're my boss. You know, the elected, I get elected every 4 years in my position, but the commissioners and the council, really, we answer to them in terms of how we spend government money. So they're very important, and the commissioner here is very important to me and my office and the function of my office. I'm Bernie Carter, Lake County Prosecuting Attorney. The way my office operates, and similar to what the commissioner is saying, there's 91 counties, but in the case of the prosecutors, it's only 90 prosecutors. And the reason for that is there's 2 counties, Miami County, and it's a real small county. They have more, I tell the prosecutor all the time, you have more horses and cows than you have people. And it's very true, very true. So what they did, they combined 2 of the counties for economic purposes. So we have 90 prosecutors throughout the state of Indiana. It's a judicial office, and they have judicial circuits. And I'm in the 31st Circuit. And essentially what is important in reference to the prosecutor is that we represent the people. We support the actions of the local police in reference to trying to reduce crime, trying to make people accountable for their conduct. My office is basically ran by state legislators, and people don't understand that or don't realize that. They go down, our representatives and our senators, the state senate, go down and they create the bills, and they tell us as prosecutors what is a crime and what the punishment of that crime will be. So I don't come up with the punishment terms. In fact, the judges rarely do. What they do, though, they give us a window or a range that we can utilize, but essentially they tell us who should go to jail and how long they should go to jail, and then we just follow suit based on how we charge the case. In Lake County, we're very fortunate to have an excellent prosecutorial staff. We have about 70 attorneys who do nothing but go in our courtrooms and prosecute criminal cases. We break it down in different divisions. We have the felony division, we have a county division. My offices are in about 12 different locations within the county. We have a juvenile division totally separate from our operations in Crown Point, but it's in Crown Point. In a different building, we have the 4D, what they call 4D is child support, one of our most important divisions. We have approximately 70 employees in child support division alone. We're one of the most busiest child support offices in the state, including Marion County, which is larger than us, but we are more so busy than they are. And one of the reasons for that, unfortunately, is the economics of Lake County. So it kind of trickles down even to child support. And there's nothing more important than, as a prosecutor, making sure people are responsible for their obligations. Because I do utilize the vision that child support, the lack of child support is punishment to the child. It's child abuse. You have to give children, and the commissioner and I were just talking about education and kids getting education, because my daughter is here. She's 12 years old in 6th grade and going to 7th grade, right, Brooklyn? She said, yes, get that right. But it's very important for us as parents to make sure we give our children every opportunity that we can give them. As a prosecutor, that's the best thing that I can push and do, and I do a lot of public speaking on that, because when we work with our children and we build our children, what we have is less crime. Absolutely less crime. There's a disconnect, and a lot of people don't understand that. They think that police, commissioner, the judges, the prison system should correct our problems, but that's not true. And what that is I think, is the community putting their resources and their ideals as to how this problem can be solved in a situation where it's not going to happen. We have to turn to the parents. We have to turn to personal responsibility in order to get ourselves out of this criminal problem that we have. I come in the morning in the office and I look and see the new charges that we filed and people we arrested, And it just astonishes me to see how a large percentage of the African American community is such a big part of the criminal justice system. It's not right by no fashion. And I know that coming from a historical black family. Well, my grandmother, my grandfather, I mean, we took pride in who we were. We took pride in the name Carter. We talked about it. You don't hurt that name. You don't ruin that name. You make sure when you go out of this house that you do things that are respectful to each and every one of our family members. So in turn, I spent my whole life personally, and even now, trying to protect my name for my mother's purpose. And my mother just died 2 years ago at 98. But I lived my whole life up until her death saying what I do today is she pleased with. If she reads it in the paper, if she sees it somewhere, is she pleased with what her son is doing? And that's really motivating me to be who I am and to continue to be who I am. And I want each and every one of our young people to feel that way. But many of them don't. And the reason they don't is because of that family unit. So we have to build that family unit, and then I won't have the work that I need. The commissioners won't have to spend 2/3 of the county budget on law enforcement. 2/3 of our tax dollars go toward law enforcement. It should be 1/3. That's what it should be. It should not be what we pay to house, to charge, to the attorneys that we have, the expert witnesses. I can do a case, and we can spend $10, $15, $20, $30,000 just on one expert to come in court and testify about a crime. That's just wasted money. That's wasted money. So one of my jobs is to make sure, as prosecutor, we understand what case is going to plead out, and those cases are going to plead out, then we're not going to spend that kind of money on those cases and then plead it out. So many times, if it's going to go to trial and we have to have the resources, we'll put the resources in it. But if I have a vision, and I say a vision, if I think that the case is going to plead out at some point, even through discussions and things of that nature, then we withdraw the financial aspect from that case. And that's how we save the county money too. A lot of people don't understand that part of it, but it can cost a lot of money for I did a death penalty case just recently, Darren Van. So I go over to Chicago and I hire an expert a psychiatrist who deals with, he's a serial killer. And he's going to come and testify as to the nature of a serial killer and what makes a serial killer kill. Well, I think most of us can kind of explain that almost to a jury, but they want to hear that. So he said, well, Mr. Carter, you give us $15,000 down, and then we'll work off that. So we got to write a county check for $15,000 that they have to approve for an expert witness. And he's not going to help us if we don't put that down. And then plus he's billing after that, as we all know. So it's very costly. So what I say is this, as a prosecutor, we need to spend more time, and we do, financially, the government, federal, state, and local government, on doing what we can to make sure our children are educated, make sure our children come up in a healthy home, make sure, and one of the things and let me end with this, and then I know Bill wants to talk. Is my time okay? Go ahead. Okay, thank you. I get in trouble sometimes, but I don't care. I've been around a long time, and I really don't care. But at some point, we have to identify our young people and just relate to them that one, and I know it happens, so things happen, so I want to preface this, but we have to start getting our young people not to have children too young. Now, I tell my boys that they should be 30 years old before they start having children. I have 3 boys. One is 21, just turned 21, right, Brooke? One is 29 and one is 31. None of them have kids. But I spent my whole life trying to explain to them, wait for this. Oh, thank you. I spent my whole life trying to explain to them to wait and be prepared financially, making sure you got the right person, making sure you're in that child's life. Now, I know the reality. Bernie, a junior rather, now he's 31, he could go get married and have 2 children and divorce by 33, 34. That's a reality. But it's not like him being 16 years old, making a baby, and don't have the understanding of economically how to help that child. And don't understand that he has an obligation as a parent to make sure every stage of life that this child is in his life and reflects him, hopefully. Because, sometimes we don't want kids to reflect their parents. But that shouldn't be. The child should think like you, look like you, talk like you, and want to be like you. So that means you got to have your act together. You have to have your act. Commissioner asked my daughter, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said, first thing, well, I want to be a lawyer, prosecutor, like my dad. Well, I'm not telling her to do that, but she comes to a lot of things. All my kids do. They come to a lot of functions that I do, and they're in the community, but they see that there's an obligation to all of us as elected officials and as people who are leaders to truly understand that we have to understand with our young people not to have children so young, and be prepared to have these children so you can be in their lives and you can be in control of their lives. Every sentence that we do, when somebody is convicted, we do a pre-sentence report. That means we go back and look at the history of their life. Mother, father, are they in their life? What part they played in their life? The education in their life? It's simple mathematics. You can see the problems with the African community in particular I'm speaking of. You can see the problems. I would say 85% of those cases that I look at, the individuals come before me for violent crimes, no father in the household. Some of them don't even know their father. Most of them hate their father. Some of them don't like their mothers, have problems with their mothers. Some of them don't have a man or a figure of superiority in their lives where they can look at somebody and say, well, he's doing it, that's what I want to do. You know, and that is the damaging part, and that's the part where gangs and other people influence these young people. Say, come my way, I'll take care of you, I'll love you, I'll do something for you, you'll have a family here. And then you get into behavior that will seriously hurt, you get into behavior that will seriously corrupt that child, and that's what we have. So it's not complicated, but the complication comes in how we act to offset it. And that's the problem we have. We know and we can identify why our children are being violent like they are in a time that they should not be violent. We know that the education that these young men, primarily young men, not young women, primarily young men, we know the education lacking that they have, that it's going to be foreseeable that their life is going to turn in the fashion that it turns. So we really have to work on it, whether you work on with a neighbor next door, child, whether you work with an individual who is in your family, or you work with your own children. And you tell your children that this is what you expect from them. Now, every mistakes can be made. Children born out of wedlock, that happens every day, and it has happened historically. But we need to talk to our children to try to reduce that. And in reducing that, two things happen. One, you reduce the population in our prisons automatically. And the second one, our welfare system is cut down drastically. Cut down drastically because the need is not there. That type of need is not there. And then you can put those resources into the schools, building the finest schools that you should see. And that's one of the things I have a problem with Gary. No doubt about it. In my opinion, we need a central high school. One high school that is of quality, absolutely of quality. And we need great teachers, great administrators, and we need to reduce that massive system that we have here in the educational system. There's no reason to have, I went to West Side, there's no reason to have West Side, have Roosevelt, have, I think now we only have 3 schools now. But all we need is one major high school and demand education in our system. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Very nice.
You're next.
Yes.
Well, that's why he gets my vote every 4 years. But anyway, my name is Bill Emerson Jr. I'm the Lake County Surveyor. First, I want to thank Community Health Net for hosting us. It's a really great facility, and I appreciate it. And Councilwoman for hosting this. I think it's really great to get everybody together and to reach out and tell you guys about what we do. So, like I said, I'm a Lake County Surveyor. I was born and raised in Hammond, and I ended up going to Purdue for civil engineering. So I went to Purdue for civil engineering with an emphasis in environmental water resources. And then I went to law school after that. So I've got a lot of talents that I hope to bring, and I'm bringing to the office right now. So how many of you folks know what the Lake County Surveyor's office does? Well, a few. So we do a lot. We're actually a constitutional office. So the state of Indiana, early on in its history, realized that there's a need to maintain survey markers, there's a need for drainage improvements, and the other things that we do. And the state of Indiana made this a constitutional office. So every county has a county surveyor. So really the main thing our office does is drainage. So the bulk of our budget is spent on drainage, and Commissioner Allen is one of the members of our drainage board. County Drainage Board. That's one of his hats that he wears, and where I've gotten to know him pretty well through the years here. working on drainage projects. So every month we have a drainage board meeting where we look at drainage improvements throughout the county. So we have over 600 miles of county regulated drains, so they could be open ditches. Most of them are open ditches, so like Katy Marsh Ditch, Turkey Creek is a county regulated drain. There's a lateral that goes right behind Bailey School, not in the 5th district. I think it's in the 6th. But I've spent a lot of time back there. And I kind of pride myself on being hands-on, so I'm out in the field a lot, getting wet, running through ditches, looking at ways that we can improve drainage. So if you know that area behind Bailey School, there's the Norfolk Southern tracks there, that a lot of drainage issues that quite honestly hadn't been addressed for decades. So we're getting on top of that, and Commissioner Allen has been a huge supporter and help with getting the funding to do that. So hundreds of thousands of dollars we spent back there to keep the water flowing, keep basements dry. And basically we provide an outlet for all the water. So we can't handle every drainage issue in a municipality or small things, but we provide the outlet to the bigger waterways. So that's really the biggest thing that we do. We also we operate and maintain the county GIS system, which I don't know if you're all familiar with the GIS system, but it's geographic information system. So it's like electronic mapping. You can go online, you can look at your property. You can look at where the boundary lines are generally, lot dimensions, and you click on it, you get ownership information, zoning, things like that. So it's a really useful tool. There's some information outside with that you can get. You can find that information. Also some maps, county maps, and drainage maps and stuff. If you're interested, you can take one home as a parting gift. So we do that. We also have our survey crew. So throughout the county, there are section corner markers and quarter markers. There's almost 1,000 of them that we maintain. So our survey crew goes out and makes sure that these monuments, physical monuments, are in the ground for development like this. When somebody wants to develop a lot like this, the surveyor would base their survey off of our monument that we maintain in our office, so that it's accurate, all the lot lines are right, and that development can happen hopefully more cost effectively as well. So those are the big things we do. We also manage the county MS4 program, which is like the clean water program. So we look at sediment coming off of and other contaminants and things coming off of construction sites, which can really cause a lot of problems to the environment. Illicit discharges coming out of businesses or things like that might be discharging things they're not supposed to be doing. So we have an employee who goes out full-time and looks for those things and finds them, and we end up getting IDEM involved and things like that, and other agencies to address those issues. So those are kind of the main things that we do in my office. We also and the big thing we do too is we serve the public. So that's number one for me. And without my staff, my chief deputy Jean Gray is here tonight. She's a 6th district resident in the city. But she has been great. Really, my whole staff. I couldn't do what I do without the awesome staff that I have. So that's kind of it.
Any questions?
How often are surveys usually updated through the GIS, or are they the primary responsibility of that specific landowner?
It's a great question. So when a like subdivision comes in, like a new subdivision, that's updated like the next day. So you record it downstairs, it gets drawn up, and then it's updated in our GIS system right away. Individual lot surveys, that depends on whether or not they're recorded. So the individual lot surveys don't have to be recorded by the individual surveyors, but if they are, we do have a copy of them. So if a lot of times folks will want to put up a fence or something, and the city will want a survey. Sometimes we have those, sometimes we don't. It depends on whether the individual private surveyor recorded it. So.
One more question.
Sure.
In regards to the drainage, especially through this area, we have a lot of the reminiscent, the old springs.
Mm-hmm.
Who or what is responsible for the management of that? Does that fall into the surveyor area? And if that is in fact the case, then who will we contact with concerns?
Me, or my I have a senior drainage administrator, Dan Gossman. He can tell you whether or not a specific area is ours. But generally within municipalities, we don't have a lot of jurisdiction. We do help, and we'll do joint projects if we could like open up an outlet a little better, for a project coming through. But I agree with you, and it's becoming more and more of a problem. I'm not sure the answer to that, but I was talking to Dan Picari about that actually recently, especially in this area. The groundwater table seems to be rising, but we had a really wet spring too.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm going to speak on behalf of my friend here that lives in the middle section of Gary, and good afternoon to all. And I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm glad you started timely, so I was a little bit late. So I apologize
It's all
for
right,
that.
nobody knows.
You know, don't tell it, Kyle. But anyway, I appreciate each and every one of you. There are a couple of things that I wanted to address, but my friend here, classmate, has a problem with water, okay, where she lives in the Miller section. So, and I was listening to the young lady, and that was very good information, and she agreed with me as I look back. But tell them about the problem that you're having specifically. She doesn't have an alley.
We're gonna have a drain in an alley.
Hmm.
When the homes were built back in the day.
Yep.
It's not a drain in the alley, so it's like when we get that heavy rain and the rain, it has nowhere to go. So it's like a little river back there. And a lot of times it comes underneath and comes over into my basement because it comes underneath the ground and it spreads out.
Yeah.
But there's no drain.
Have you talked to the sanitary?
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. What about putting,
I talked to the sanitary district and they told me
Got it all.
they don't
Cover that?
cover that.
Are they saying you have to do it privately then? You're saying
They
that's
told me, what was that to talk to?
So many times.
Yeah, I mean, but they told me they didn't handle it when I talked to
they
them.
couldn't do with a French drain,
And they said, told me to call, trying to think what it was,
the water company?
engineer.
Water
or
rate.
She
something.
called water company engineer, because
City
they can't
engineer.
call
Something
somebody
like that.
called me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they said, I thought it was sanitary district, when I first, they said, no, they don't handle that.
So is there anything that you can look into
I
to
mean-
direct her?
I can make some calls and try to put our heads together and see if there's anything we can figure
Yeah,
out.
well, that's the
Like,
first person I
we-
called, the sanitary
Where in
district.
the middle of you live?
Mhm.
I mean, I know on TV, I don't give like your address, but I mean, we're generally,
I live like a Clay and Miller Avenue, in that area.
We'll give you that.
All right.
Yeah.
But that's the first person I called, Gary Sanitary District, and they told me, no, they didn't have it.
I know one of the concerns is when they did a lot of alley, and I don't know if the same thing is what's going on in Miller, but what I've been told is when they did the redoing alleys, especially in this area, they paved over what were drains. And so there are very few drains that currently exist in this area,
Okay.
which is feeding back into the issue.
Yeah, and then, yeah, like I said, I'd be happy to sit down with, any of my contacts with the city and maybe with the commissioner as well,
Your
but,
cards are outside.
and it's stressful. I mean, water issues, I see it every day, you know, people who have, you know, either coming up into their basements or against the house, it's a stressful experience, so
Yeah.
I'm
We have a drain in the street, but nothing in the alley.
You see that water over there out the window?
Yeah,
Yes.
Who would address that?
that's the school
Yeah.
corporation.
Yeah,
That's the school?
That's
So
the
that's
school.
who we would call?
Yeah,
find
because
out
it's
about
in,
it?
it's in the parking lot, it's in the physical parking lot, and the career center is owned by the Gary Community School Corporation, or whoever's running it, which is the state.
Yeah.
They would have to address that issue. And sometimes parking lots just need to be repaved. Sometimes as
Yeah.
simple as the drainage, the drain being blocked, because people will put things in drains they should not put in it, grass clippings, you know. Obviously accumulation of dirt, you know, people drive by, things kick up, and they, you see the vac trucks out there trying to, you know, unplug clogged drains. It could be a sewer collapse. I mean, it could be a multitude of things. But I know that the sanitary district does have the ability to send the remote cameras down into the drain, so you can see whether or not, you know, what the problem is, and whether or not, you know, that it can be fixed or should be fixed or be responsible. But I think those issues persist, and obviously infrastructure is expensive, particularly in the northern half with the older cities like Gary, Hammond, and East Chicago. a lot of that stuff is dated and needs to be replaced, or in your case, maybe added on to. That might be the original drain when they built Miller, you know what I mean, so.
So those houses up in there were built like 1925.
Oh, yeah, those hold on, yeah,
Yeah,
that might be
so-
100-year-old manhole, right, or sewer,
Yeah.
whatever you wanna call it, yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm concerned of this subject, but this is another concern of mine concerning manhole gravity. I'm in the system about 3.5 months now. I done had 2 flats, in 23rd and 24th and Monroe Street.
Manhole or potholes?
Manhole potholes.
He said, don't.
Either way. But I'm not, unit services right around the area, but they're not touching my block. I don't know why. Plus, in my alley, you got weeds sky high and not being chopped down anything. And man-eater, I done brought it to attention about man-eater rats, raccoons. And little kids come to that alley going to that school there, and one of these days they're gonna get bitten, you know?
Yeah.
And I hope not, you know.
So where's that area, what area you're in?
23rd and between 23rd and 24th and Monroe Street.
Of the property in question. If it's a vacant lot, they need for you to contact the treasurer's office, who will have the, who owns the property. Or, you know, if it is vacant, no one owns it. They only will cut properties that are not owned. If they come out and they find out that someone owns that property, they're going to find them. They're not gonna send the work crew out if it's owned. They're not gonna send it out. And so they have a committee, that oversees who does those lots. And so what they told me, once right now, I am trying to find out who owns all the properties. I have like 100 properties that I'm trying to investigate, trying to get the information on who owns it. So there are a number of people who are out of state and they own property, they're just not maintaining it. It's vacant, but it's owned by someone. And so, the sheriff's department do not want me to send that to them. And so they only want the ones that are vacant and they are requiring, for me to send the information from the treasurer's department. Whatever I find out of who owns it, I have to send that information to them. They want the address and they want that property, property detailed information from the treasurer's department. And then they will have their committee to review it and then determine if their people can go out to do that.
And code enforcement said they was looking into that too, you know, so I don't know what's going on.
So that's only with that company.
No,
That's
that's
the
the
sheriff.
sheriff.
That's the Lake County Sheriff's Department.
Sheriff's
Department.
Department.
Sheriff's Department.
If we want them to come out and try to do it, but what about,
With general services?
Yeah.
They
General
don't, they're just cutting grass, but, you know, they're doing everything. General services is doing grass cutting, potholes, tree cutting,
tree cuttings and, so you have to
Not for
like,
private.
you have to get on 311 for that, for them to come down and do, like I have put my hands, like he said, I called too. For
we
like
have an extension.
lines, like you can't get out into the avenue where I'm at. It is so much wooded areas that need to be
Cut down.
trimmed and cut down. You can't even get across that section of the road to get out. Before you can get into, you gotta get in the road to see where you're going. You know, it's all along 40th Avenue, up from Grant to Harrison. All that, you got little wooded areas over there that needs to be cut down, big trees hanging over. It's more like a safety hazard, really.
It is.
Ms. Carol Ann Seaton?
Yes, my question is about the bridge on Harrison Street, and I've been told that's not city, it's not county, it's not in state, nobody wants to claim it, so.
That's a state bridge.
Okay, because when I called the state, they said, no, that was county. So we go back to the state because it's really an inconvenience to everyone in that area.
Harrison. What I'm trying to
Around
think.
26, it's cut off from 25th
Oh,
all the
wait a
way
minute.
through Park.
I got you mixed up.
8094.
The Harrison Bridge goes over 8094. So it would be, that would be a state bridge. That would not be, that would
That
not.
doesn't go over 8094 right there. No.
You talking about Gleason Golf Course?
Yeah.
Yeah, she leave it worse.
Yeah.
But it's still considered state.
About 20.
Doesn't the Harrison Bridge go
Nine.
over 8094?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, that does go over 80. I'm thinking in my mind, yeah.
Yeah.
The Harrison Bridge goes over 8094.
Yeah, 2900.
Because you're going toward Gleason, right?
Mhm.
So if you're on Harrison Street, you're driving past Roosevelt, you're
Yeah.
going south, and you go, right,
You go, yeah, you go over that one.
you go over,
right.
that's the overpass. You talking about that little bridge. No, the bridge is county, because it's the Davy Clay Bridge.
Right.
That's what it said.
Yeah, that's the county, yeah. You're, I had to think, okay, I'm trying to picture this in my mind, but David Clay.
Bruce Clay's brother.
They like married Commissioner Clay's brother. You know that, didn't
I
you?
did not.
Small world. I'm sorry, yes ma'am, go ahead with you.
So
I don't know, I mean, what's going on with the,
it's closed.
It's
been closed almost 3
3 years, yeah.
Okay, I'll find out for you.
Planning on open.
Yeah, I'll find out for you with the next, that's fine. Because if a bridge is not on a state or federal highway, by default, it belongs to the county commissioners. That's how it works. So if a bridge goes over I-65 or over US Highway 12 and 20, then it would be state or federal. So if a bridge is not on a state or federal highway, then it belongs to the county commissioners. You're absolutely right. Yes. But I'll find out. Yes,
So
ma'am.
you gonna work to reopen it?
Well, I want to see where it's at, I mean, because we got a lot, we have a lot of bridges, and we do
Yeah.
bridge works, and we have an engineering firm that does bridge inspections, because as you've seen over the years, there's been a lot of bridge collapses
Yeah.
around the country where people have injured, and in some cases, worst case, they have been killed, and, obviously, you don't want be held accountable for malfeasance or, you're not doing your job, especially if it results in the loss of life for someone being injured, so, I got you.
I have more of a comical question than,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, so I'm an avid 911 live watcher. So as of recently, the Lake County Police has been followed by,
So on TV?
yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that a financial gain to the county, or is that just for entertainment purposes?
I think, as far as I know, it doesn't cost us nothing, but ultimately, law enforcement shows routinely come to large cities or counties in large metropolitan areas, and there's no financial upside now.
So there's no gain from it?
No, I read the contract that the sheriff signed with that company.
Mhm.
I think it's Fox.
Fox News, it's Fox.
And the benefit is, I think, and the sheriff says himself, the benefit is letting the public know what
We do.
they do. But they don't collect any proceeds from it, no profit from it. And I don't think they even wanted to, because they didn't want to put the economic aspect to it in terms of, I mean, at least as a prosecutor, I don't want them to. Because, they can take what's live and what's reality, but we're dealing with people's lives, we're dealing with constitutional rights and protections, and we don't need people ad-libbing or there's a motive
So
for
from
them
that
to want to do it.
standpoint,
Mhm.
isn't that a hindrance then?
To law enforcement or to?
To law enforcement, to the city, to the
I don't see it-
negative
I don't-
connotation that's put upon this community?
Yeah.
So that further you know what I'm saying?
Perpetuate, yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I understand that one, yeah, I see
It
it.
puts us in a negative,
Yeah, it does to some extent, you're right, I mean, that's a reality though, but it certainly does.
It's a harsh
Yeah,
reality,
that's what it
people.
is. They did it down in Indianapolis,
I mean,
40
it's done
hours.
all over the country.
It's all over the country, first of all, it doesn't matter where you go, whether you have cops, or First 48.
Right.
I mean, pick a show. I mean,
Yeah.
they just detail that, you know,
They
this.
do about 4 or 5 different cities within the same shooting too, so they
Right.
mix the different departments.
Well, Lake County's
Fire.
gotten a lot of,
Yeah,
I mean, call it negative, call it what you want to, but it's a lot of exposure.
Yes.
And, you know, I just pray that the same amount of energy is given to the positive things that are going on in the community.
absolutely.
That's
yeah.
my only concern.
Yeah, and you know, that never happens, because the media don't want that.
No, they
do.
want-
Negative news
you know,
that
all the
sells.
negative news that sells, you look at on 5 o'clock news, on the 5 o'clock news, 6 o'clock news, they start off with crime in the city and people stab and shoot one another. They don't start off with somebody getting an award, because we got a lot of people doing great, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We got some beautiful minds and people doing some fantastic things, but that doesn't sell, and they'll put it on the 3rd page in the paper, but it's not gonna get the front page.
Exactly.
So, you know, I see what you, no, I have to say, they're obviously using us. You know, absolutely, they're gaining more than we are. They're making big money off the commercials and this and that, and it does have that, appearance that Lake County is violent or whatever, but as the commissioner said, that's a reality too, in a sense.
Yeah, but
You know.
That's
No,
not
we don't,
open up.
it'd be nice if the proceeds were given to an organization that, you know, like Indiana Parenting Institute. I'm a big member of that. You know, you got to work with the parents to keep these kids.
Boys and
going-
Girls
Yeah,
Club,
Boys and
yeah.
Girls Club, yeah. So, you know, that could, but I wasn't at the table in that negotiation. I had nothing to do with, excuse me, I have nothing to do with that program. But I did read the contract because as it relates to people that they apprehend, I need to know when we prosecute them, are we gonna have problems with the courts?
Right.
Liability
Right.
and discovery. I mean, there's taping going on. As a prosecutor, I need to have every footage of every arrest that they do in that mass raids and all that stuff. Normally, we only have the body camera
Right.
from the officer. All police officers don't really take cameras into an investigation. They really don't. It's not even safe. So they use the body cams, and then in court we use whatever vision's on there if it's on. Sometimes, as you see nationally, you have a hard time sometimes turning it on or turning it off. You know. So yeah, that's my concern too with that. Yeah, that's a tough call.
And I totally agree, that is unfortunately a reality. It is for real. And let me say on that note, and I appreciate all of you again, and Mr. Carter,
Yes, ma'am.
I wonder how many people here, I know you are familiar with POP, P-O-P. That's an excellent, excellent organization, and Ms. Caldwell, Barnes Caldwell, I wish you'd invite Dr. McGee, Rutland, even my daughter, Kim, is a part of that organization. And for those of you that don't know what POP is, it's a group of black doctors, 8 black doctors, 2 of which are from Gary, you know, born and raised, that are doing great things in the neighborhood. They did a luncheon yesterday for the young people. Your name was mentioned, Mr.
Yeah. Oh.
Carter, Positive.
Oh, thank you.
And they do scholarships, and they encourage young people to sign up for the medical field, any aspect of medical field. And they go out to all the various schools. They've been going from school to schools, from here to Merrifield, to Hampton,
Absolutely.
Chicago, all over, talking to young people about violence and that sort of thing. And we talk about Black Lives Matter, and in sitting and listening, and she was once a student of Mr. Carter and speaks very, very highly of you, highly respect you. And she said something that even caught my eyes during her presentation, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, you don't kill.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
She said, I just wonder, when we talk about Black Lives, and she's an officer, you know, that's all I can say on that aspect, but we talk about Black Lives Matter, and it seems that Black lives only matter when police are involved, you know, or some aspect of law enforcement.
Yes.
But her question was, and I pose this question to each of you, when it comes to Black lives, when would Black lives matter to Black people?
Yeah.
Because so many of us are killing each other. And unfortunately, I did have a lot of literature, you know, that one day I shared with Ms. Caldwell. Maybe she could share it during the presentation. My question, though, is this, and one of you, or a couple of you on this panel said it earlier about parental involvement. You know, and I'm just a firm believer, being an old timer, that it starts from home.
Yes.
I mean,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
honest to God,
Yeah.
it starts from home. And as old as my two children are, and my son is 34, 300 pounds, about 6 feet tall. But when I get on him, he put both hands behind his back as he stands, okay? And he said, Mama, I'm just gonna leave, you know, that's the best thing to do, okay? Because, you know what's that old saying, folks, I brought you here? You know, but we need to get more involved, and I personally want to say thank you to each of you, because it shows us, the community, that you care.
Yes.
You know, being involved and that you care. But I wish that all of us would work more and reach out to Pop. Dr. McGee will come wherever you are, you know, and talk to you and reach out to your young people and sign them up.
And that is so true, and you know, that answers your question in terms of the bad things that is publicized so much. And there's so many good things isolated that's going on, and it just needs exposure. And once you get that exposure, because you know, the interesting thing that I kind of live off is that the term, you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
That is so true, because if you don't know what you don't know, you're never gonna get what you need. You're not gonna get, our young people aren't gonna be exposed to it. You can only acquire greatness or any type of
knowledge
by knowledge.
That's right.
And you have no
That's right.
knowledge that it
Exactly.
exists. You know, then it's like, you know, like when I take my daughters on vacation, they see certain areas, like, do people live like this? It's so beautiful. And so, you know, if you don't see it,
You don't know
you
about
don't know that's capable of, I'm capable of doing that. I can have that, just like they had it. And you're right, Pop, that is such a fantastic, professional people talking to young people saying you can do it. And they know that they can do it because they did it.
Right.
And so they know there's a way to it. And it's not that complicated if you keep yourself right. So I agree, absolutely.
The other, I'm sorry, the other side of that is, we haven't addressed is the mental, fortitude, mental health, and which is a big
That's true.
piece of this.
Yes.
And then, we talk a lot about the children, but if the parents are not exposed, then that also puts a hindrance on whatever it is that we try to impart upon the children.
Sure,
Been in a
absolutely, yes.
situation where a child has gotten a full scholarship,
Yeah.
and mother said, well, I didn't get to go anywhere, so that child can't go anywhere either.
Yeah.
So we can't just focus it directly on the children,
Oh,
but
you're
it has
absolutely
to be a full community effort.
Yeah, that's so true.
One last thing. Oh, go ahead.
Good, Ms. Sherry.
Okay, what I was gonna say, I want to commend Prosecutor Bernard Carter for what he said, because I have a son who's 18, just graduated high school, and it takes a village. And I thank God for, you know, the Pop Foundation, but my son also, he went through the rites of passage at Trinity Church, and that helped him to turn around. But you have to be able to communicate with your children. I also have a daughter, but she's 36 and in Dallas, corporate lawyer, and she's a Harvard grad. So, but I think you have to talk with them. And what I told my son, he's getting ready to go into a military in August, to the Navy. And I had to talk with him, and I had to tell him, you determine the type of man you want to be.
That's very true.
And so, he is a track star, graduated from college, about to serve his country. So, but it took a village. But I tell you, I think the positive things, because once they come to you, prosecutor, once our young men come to you, it's kind of like
Too late.
Yeah, it's difficult. That's
So,
what I say.
we need to have these type of programs, and gear it up. And like the young lady said, parents, we have a lot of people, whose, parents have mental illness. And, I have a situation in my family that our whole family's getting together, getting ready
That's
to
good.
take on,
Yes.
you know, one of our relatives. But it takes a village. And all these programs, they need to be open, and we need to have more communication about where they are, and instead of all the, you know, the jails and things like that.
Yes,
We need those out. We need more forums like this to bring out the positive. And I know Councilwoman, she does a great job because I help her to do that, to try to bring people together.
Yes.
So, and she's very familiar with Pop, but at Trinity, that helped my son tremendously. And to see other young men who are going through that, and to be in the church. But I did have to talk with him, and he determined, I said, you got to determine what type of man you want to be. You don't let others say who you are. You say who you are.
Choices.
And, yeah.
Right, exactly.
So that's important, but I like what you said, I tell my son that, I told my daughter that, wait till you in your 30s.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
don't, live your life, travel the world, make your money,
Absolutely.
but don't get tied up right
Absolutely.
now. I'm not a grandmother, so I'm glad about that. I'm glad about that.
Yeah, you do want them to live a nice, young, healthy life, do the things they need to do, explore the things they need to do. I'm a big person on saving and planning for the future. And then when you do have children, you're ready for them. And you can give the energy that, because it takes a lot of energy to bring up a young person in this society. Yeah, patience, you know, and if you're not there and you're not conscious about it, then you're kind of cheating the child a little bit. Children can make it without that, because we see it all the time. You have a terrible mother, no father, and you be one of the best people as far as career and your lifestyle. But that's hard. You're behind that 8 ball, and most kids don't make it behind that. But when you have that positive, you know, then I think it promotes itself and promotes itself. So you're absolutely
And I
right.
like that Indiana Parenting Institute. That is
Yes.
excellent.
Yeah, they do a great job. They really do. And their main purpose, I think, is to, and I use this term, is to train the parents, and primarily the female, to a quality life and how to understand taking care of themselves, taking care of the house. Real elementary things, but it is really things that a lot of us lack. I don't care who you are and what your economic status. Raising children, it takes a different type of attitude, and it's not really based on money.
That's
You know,
right.
you know, and so they kind of push that. I really like what they do with that.
And Councilwoman, give her another kudos. She opened that up. She brought them her forum.
Yes.
So she is, she's very active in the community, and I know this year she has, had her different meetings at different places. And she wants to expose the people and let the people know the different things. But I really enjoyed the whole panel. And Mr. Emerson was the first one to come on board to say that he would participate and to learn exactly what you